begin speaking. We've been cleared for takeoff and we'll be departing shortly.
Go ahead and give that man a round of applause.
That boy's got talent.
Hello. Welcome back. Shaney. Hey, Craft with Craft and Trade Entertainment. And we've got another tutorial on the way here. And what we're going to go over today is touch base on some routing. I'm going to probably revert a little bit back into the session setup, but as far as how that goes. But as you can see, I've got a session pulled up here. And we'll get over into the routing. And as you can see, like I said, I've got all my different tracks all color labeled, you know, as far as verses, hooks, leads, backings for the hook, and then it just goes back into the next verse, which is color coded all over again. Then my aux tracks are all color coded depending on verse auxes, hook auxes, some other like two mix stuff going on here. And then, you know, I have them all labeled down here. And then normally if I was over here and I was labeling the whole session, I would go verse, backing left, right, backing to left, backing to right, and so on and so forth. But like I said, we're going to go over some routing. So what is routing? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is taking something that's going to, well, just kind of go through it visually as we do this. So, right, we have got, there's two kinds of routing that I use, and that's, you have in and out routing down here on your actual channel ins and out. So your inputs, obviously, in this case, it's going to be the microphone, which is plugged into my analog 2 channel on the back of the RME Fireface. That's how we're getting signal into it. Then after it leaves that and it's going out, instead of going to an output straight to the speakers or to an additional hardware out, we're going to the bus. All right, and you can see it's already check marked, but I've labeled my buses, and this is verse lead comp, so that's where we're sending that out. Verse lead comp. Where's verse lead comp? It's up here. So you can see right down here is verse lead level is verse lead comp. The input right here, instead of coming from a hardware input that would be here in your interface, you're going to your buses. And you're choosing the verse lead comp so that comes out of that channel and ends up here as a kind of a chilling spot for all of your vocals to end up at, to kind of have some unilateral control or some total control over certain parts of your mix. Lead vocal, you know, is here. Now to go a step further, and I'll kind of try to breeze through this because it's not exciting stuff, but it's very necessary. And then on the backing vocals, you can see that instead of going out to verse lead comp, it's going out to verse back comp, which that's for the backing vocals. And here you see that I have my verse backing compression track where all the backing vocals will end up there. And on these tracks, what I'm doing is I'm just maybe applying a little bit of compression to glue things together. Maybe in other scenarios I might be doing some other things, but that's kind of what I do. And also it allows me to use these faders to make total adjustments. Say I'm happy with the balance of the verses from one verse to the other, but maybe at some point I'm like, it just seems like it needs to be louder, or maybe it needs to be softer, or maybe the backing vocals are too loud or too soft. This is a way to make quick changes with that. And then we're going to slide back over here, and we're going to go over these, which are your sends. Now you have inserts, which are things that you're going to, plugins you're going to place and whatnot, but then you have a sends section. And the sends is to take an additional version of that signal and send it somewhere else out. And these sends have a fader where you can determine how much of that signal you want to push up and send out to that aux track that you're sending it to. So I have verse delay, verse verb, and verse parallel compression bus tracks. And those are the same. You're sending these buses out here. You're finding those here. All right? So verse delay. It's the same premise. You come over here, I have verse delay here, verse verb. I've got a delay pulled up on it, and then I have a reverb over here on this track, and as you can see, those are pulling in from verse delay and verse verb, and then, you know, the parallel compression track that's over here as well the P comp. Let me get all the way back over here. That is over here on a brown track, I believe. Yeah. And that's where I'm really squashing that signal down purposely, because it's a parallel compression track, and we will go over parallel compression on another tutorial, but that's why I have that there. And I can control that fader, and I can control these faders for how much volume or how much I want to pull those effects down. And the reason that you do that is, the reason I do it is it keeps the lead vocal relatively dry, and so you're not tainting the lead vocal. You still have a nice, clean, EQ'd and compressed lead vocal or whatever, backing vocal, but you're able to send an alternate version out of that where you're applying the reverb onto a channel all its own, and you can independently control that effect separately from the lead vocal. And I feel like that's a way to get the most out of those effects and for them to really function properly. So that's kind of the premise as to why I route like that. And we're going to go a little bit further into that. So just give me just a moment. So now, as we're over here on these aux tracks, and I have the same setup for the hooks, but as you can see, all these vocal tracks are all going out to all Vox, which is this track right down here. And basically, that's the final resting place for all the vocals. And I might do some compression there, maybe not, and then do some limiting. But this is the final spot. And this ultimately, this part, all these vocal parts of the mix are going to end up here on all Vox. Now, we're going to kind of use the same theory, but it's going to be on the analog side here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And this is why I have the video going for this tutorial as well. As you can see on the output of all Vox, instead of going out to a bus, it says analog. Well, that's because we are going out to an analog. We are actually shooting that signal out of the back of the interface through channel 7 and 8, and it's a 1/4 inch out of the 7 and 8, and it's going into this physical piece of hardware here, which is my successor mastering compressor. Then it comes out of that 1/4 inch out into the 1/4 inch ends of my mastering EQ, which is a TK-Lizer 2. And then coming out of that is 1/4 inch outputs that go back into the 1/4 inch inputs of analog channel 7 and 8 to get all of that back in. And in this particular song, I was just working off of a 2 mix, so you can see that it also goes out to analog 7 and 8 as well. And so it's going to be running through that chain as well when it comes back in. So that goes out analog 7 and 8, and then it all comes back in. And then on this track right here, which is where everything ends up back in the DAW, it's pulling in from analog 7 and 8 input and getting back into here so I can apply some tail end limiting on it. And these 2 pieces of hardware here that I got, I mean, I get almost all of, well, I would say in the last 15 years, I've purchased 97% of audio related equipment from Sweetwater.com in Fort Wayne, Indiana, who also has in the summertime, they have Gear Fest, which I've never been. I would love to go. It looks amazing. But Robbie Resnick is my Sweetwater rep and has been for 15 years, and I wouldn't use anybody else. I like his demeanor. I like he's a straight shooter. He'll give you a number of options and what the differences between those options are so you can make an educated decision on serious, high-quality purchases for your studio to help you continue to carve your craft and get better at it. So shout out to Robbie Resnick, Sweetwater.com, Fort Wayne, Indiana. If you had my opinion, that's the only dude I would deal with. Anyway, back to business. Another thing that you can do, which I don't do it a lot more, but you can but you can side chain using sends. So let's say on the parallel compression track here, you see the parallel compression verse P comp is what that's coming off of, it's where it's pulling that audio from, which is this send right here. So if we were to find a compressor that had side chain capability, which I believe this one does. Yes. So you have side chain, right? And if you look up here where I've got my mouse hovered, there's a key. That's for key input, meaning what is going to key or trigger this compressor to work. Something is, because now we've side chained it instead of running it regularly. And what that means is it's not going to compress the signal based upon when it goes over a certain threshold, the actual audio signal here. It means that the audio signal here is only going to be compressed when it's triggered by whatever you're pulling the side chain signal from. In this case, we could go and we could find the parallel compression versus PComp trigger, right? Now let's play this and I'll kind of try to show you what's going on here. Let me make that inactive. So as you can see, when you disengage the sidechain capability and then re-engage it, you'll see when you disengage it, it goes back up here, and when you engage it, it comes back down here. And you can also see that the movement of that, when the sidechain is engaged, the movement of that is in unison with the vocal, because the vocal is what's triggering to compress that. And once the vocal signal is no longer present, there will be nothing compressing the beat down anymore. And what they use that for is if you have a 2 mix and maybe something isn't right, you can't get the vocals to poke through after trying a number of different things, you can use the whatever signal that has a vocal as a key input to say, hey, when this vocal is present, it's going to push down the beat only when it's present. But you do have to be careful with your attack times and release times with using the side chain like that, because you can get into some weird stuff if you do that incorrectly. But that is another thing you can use the side chaining for. But ultimately, the reason that I route like that is because over here, when I get to my aux tracks, one, it makes the use of these delays, reverbs, any effects, using them on aux tracks, it increases the capability and the flexibility of using those effects and not having them slapped and not stamped on, because it's non-destructive editing. But in a way, you're already putting a flavor on the lead vocal that's gonna follow it throughout the mix. Whereas as if you put the plugin on an aux track, it's separate. It's not on the actual audio channel. That's nice. It's EQ'd and compressed, and that's fine. And then you have a send that comes over here, and you pull that to get these effects on there, and then you can use the faders to pull that down and push it up, and you can do that across the board. And also, when you get into that, you'll start to learn when you get into routing things and using aux inputs and stacking effects and things like that, that you can start to get into some pretty cool chains of effects, and you'll start to learn what's possible when you use routing the right way and in an artistic way too. I'm not sure if I'm kind of leaving anything out. I mean, that's in a nutshell. You have all these inputs and outputs to pull from here, whether you're pulling from your interface or you're pulling from a bus inside of Pro Tools. That's all done here, and how you get that audio signal to those channels is by using sends and choosing how much of that signal that you want to send out to that channel. So once again, that was kind of a really, really fast crash course, because I'm kind of in a rush, but I hope that cleared things up a little bit. And once again, I do thank you for spending a little bit of time with me, and I hope you enjoy your day. Peace and chicken grease.